now that I've found New Friends, New Life and have this wonderful opportunity to work to better the lives of women and girls who are living in the margins of society and often don't have anyone who will fight for them, I have realized that this is what God wanted me to do, and that all of the experiences that I had prior to were leading me to this. We're building the right skills in me to be able to do this.
Hello, and welcome to More Than Sunday, a weekly podcast where we take a deeper dive into the stories, themes, and questions of our faith. My name is Eric Chakowski. I'm one of the worship directors here at First United Methodist Church Richardson, and with me every week is one of our associate pastors, Josh Fitzpatrick. Josh, how's it going?
I'm doing well. It's great to be with you today.
Good to have you today. We have a conversation that's a difficult one to talk about today, but we really think it's important to have this conversation. We do want to let you know that there's some difficult topics. So this episode may not be suitable for all ages, so we want to let you know that ahead of time. But we're having a conversation today around sex trafficking, the impact it has on our world, and even more specifically right here locally on our community that we may not be aware of. It impacts all of us and has the potential to impact people that we know, people that we are close to, and people that we interact with on a regular basis.
There's an organization here in North Texas called New Friends, New Life that we as a church have been supporting in a variety of ways. Our senior pastor, Clayton Oliphant, is on the board of their men's advocacy group. I know that our director of missions, Joy Anderson, takes a team on occasion to help serve meals at their Wednesday night programming. And I'm aware that there are several church members who get involved in the variety of ways that New Friends, New Life asks for assistance in helping people in the world of trafficking. And so rather than telling you about the organization itself, we're going to let the CEO of New Friends, New Life do that. We are pleased to welcome to the show today, Kim Robinson. Today on the podcast, we have the pleasure of being joined by Kim Robinson, who is the CEO of New Friends, New Life, an organization here that is fighting sex trafficking in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. It is so good to have you here this morning. Just thanks for joining us today.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here.
Let me just set the stage a little bit for those of us who haven't met you yet, our listeners. Would you mind telling us a little bit of your own context and your journey on what brought you to this point of being the CEO of New Friends, New Life?
Yeah, I'd love to. My journey with helping women and bettering their lives started a few years back with my appointment as Chief Operating Officer of Girl Scouts of Northeast Texas. Prior to that, I had spent about 20 years in the for-profit sector working for various packaged goods companies doing marketing and brand strategy work. And little did I know that those opportunities were preparing me nicely to be able to manage an organization, think about growth strategies, think about how we can better serve our customers who are the women and the girls that we serve at New Friends, New Life. After leaving Girl Scouts, of course, I went directly to New Friends, New Life, as you said, as a CEO, and I've been there now 14 months, and we strive every day to build on our 20-year reputation of serving formerly trafficked women and girls and standing on the shoulders of so many powerful individuals who came before us and making sure that our organization continues to serve as many women as possible and continues to expand its services.
So you talk about that 20-year history that New Friends, New Life has. For those of our listeners who are not familiar with this organization, tell us about the mission of New Friends, New Life and maybe how and why it got started.
Yes, well, New Friends, New Life's mission is to restore and empower formerly trafficked and sexually exploited women and their children and teens. Many times women and teens are put in situations where they think they have no way out, and that is typically where New Friends, New Life comes in. We provide access to job skills and vocational training We offer interim financial assistance because that is one of the biggest struggles is how am I going to eat? Where am I going to live? How am I going to clothe myself and oftentimes my children? We also, and I think most importantly, have a great staff of clinicians who are licensed to help with the mental health needs. As you can imagine, after years of being traumatized, individuals need that mental support to be able to find peace and to process what has happened to them, to make peace with that past and be able to move forward. And then we also have a component of spiritual support because so many women turn to their spirituality in times of need.
So I feel like we're working backwards here, but even more foundationally, can we talk about what sex trafficking is?
Yes.
Just a definition in general.
Yes. So sex trafficking occurs whenever a person is induced to commit a sexual act, we call them commercial sexual acts, by force, fraud, or coercion. So if a person is over the age of 18, is fully an adult, if force, fraud, and coercion are involved to commit a commercial sex act for anything of value, that is considered being sex trafficked. One major difference for individuals who are minors or under the age of 18, those three words, force, fraud, and coercion, need not exist. If a minor commits a sex act for anything of value, so it's not just money, it's food, it's clothes, it's shelter, you name it, that is considered being trafficked. And I think a lot of people have not fully understood that that is the definition of it. Thus, through education, people are understanding that this is more prevalent than they thought, especially in their own backyards, because for so long people have thought of this as a problem that only happens overseas, and there's this perception of a girl being snatched and taken away. Well, so often, and in fact, all the cases that we see at New Friends, New Life, these individuals have been trafficked right here in the city of Dallas.
So even going back to the organization, 20 years in existence, how does something like this start? Mm-hmm. What are the origins of the organization and who kicked it off initially?
Yeah, I love talking about that. So over 20 years ago, a group of women in a church here in Dallas were approached by a young lady who was dancing in a club. And she reached out to them and said, you know, for so long I have wanted to be able to stop this, but I just don't know how I will survive. Going back to those issues of financially, how will I make it? What will I tell an employer? I have no job experience. Oftentimes, our women have criminal backgrounds. So this woman had a series of things like that she felt like she couldn't overcome. So she had to stay in that club doing what she was doing. Well, this group of women surrounded her with the resources that she needed to be able to come fully out and begin a new life. And of course, through word of mouth, more women started to come to them. She went and told all of her friends in the club. And over the course of time, a nonprofit organization was formed where counseling and financial support and skills training was available for these women, and they were fully supported until they got on their feet. And over 20 years, we've been able to serve hundreds of women who are in similar situations.
So you mentioned that there were a number of folks in the United States and even in our own backyard here in Dallas that are affected by sex trafficking, and yet we perceive this to be an issue primarily overseas. Is this something that's become more prevalent in the United States recently, or is this something that we're just becoming more aware of?
It is definitely something that we're becoming more aware of. Every year, millions of men, women, and children are trafficked. So human trafficking has several different forms. Sex trafficking is one of them. The other big form is labor trafficking. But in the world of sex trafficking, girls have been prostituted, sold for sex, and now are being sold on the internet for years. And people are just becoming aware that these things are involuntary, understanding that a woman is not a prostitute, she's being prostituted, and understanding the backgrounds of abuse, of sexual and physical nature, of poverty, of homelessness, those things that generally happen in a woman's childhood that make her vulnerable as a teen to being manipulated by a trafficker who can see that hole in her and knows exactly how to fill it. So oftentimes we think, well, this is a choice that they made. Didn't she realize that this person meant her harm? Well, no. The women that we talk to, they often start a relationship with a male or a female who is helping them to survive, not mean to them. They're giving them everything that they need: food, clothes, shelter. They're befriending them. They're listening to them. And then over the course of time, when that grooming period ends, then the switch flips and it becomes a situation where they're being forced into doing things that they don't want to do. And making a choice to say, no, I'm not going to do this, is often impossible because they're being threatened or their family is being threatened if they don't do what they're told to do. And they often don't feel like they have a way out of that. Pretty soon, addiction ensues, and it makes it even harder to make any sort of rational decisions about how you can escape that life. So people's eyes are being opened to the fact that, these women are coming into this largely through no fault of their own, and they're being trafficked.
One of the things I love about New Friends, New Life and my short experience with it is it seems like a lot of your mission is to change the language. Mm-hmm. Instead of saying she is a prostitute, she is being prostituted. I went to a fundraising breakfast recently, and the speaker was talking about the change in language on college campuses, talking about how many victims of sexual assault there were on the college campus in the past year. And instead, the language should be, well, how many perpetrators of sexual assault were there? And let's change the point of agency. So instead of talking about the women who were assaulted, why aren't we talking about the men who were assaulting?
That's right. Instead of talking about her problem,
yes.
Let's talk about his problem, or the person who committed the crime's problem. Put the emphasis where it needs to be. Yes.
And that changes the perception. So
yes.
When we talk about, well, we're finally recognizing it in our own backyard, I think part of that is, well, we're finally changing the conversation.
We are.
So our senior pastor, Clayton Oliphant, serves on the board of the Men's Advocacy Group. Could you tell us a little bit more about what the Men's Advocacy Group is?
Yes, absolutely. So our Men's Advocacy Group is led by business and community leaders who are focused on mobilizing men to raise awareness and act against human trafficking and sexual exploitation of women and children. So these men believe that they are often seen as the problem. Instead, they want to be seen as part of the solution. So they are mobilizing their efforts in a number of ways. One way in which I really get enthused about is the Man Kindness Project, whereby they're going into high schools and talking to high school boys and athletes, who are just in the thick of puberty and trying to understand their manhood. And they're talking to them about healthy manhood and the impact of things that often boys think are trivial, just a part of being a man, like pornography. So they are delving deep with them into that subject to help them understand the impact that has over time on their brain and their perceptions about women, and promoting objectification of women. I read a stat that says the average age that a boy views pornography is 11 years old. Mm-hmm. So by the time we talk to them as, 15-year-olds in high school, they have been exposed, and often numerous times, and are numb to any negative impact that might be having on them. So they are able to have open discussions about that, because we know that pornography is a direct gateway on the path to exploitation of women. So that is is one thing that the men's group does. The other one is called our No Harm Network, and it's a collective effort to educate and raise awareness with businesses to encourage them to join our fight and make sure that there are no business activities that are contributing to sexual exploitation of women and children. So within their walls, we're encouraging them to make sure that there are filters in place to prevent any viewing of pornography or any other things along those lines, and also that travel expenses that are related to any sort of exploitation of women are not accepted.
And I love that. Now, granted, in our church profession in the bubble, we don't really close deals at strip clubs. It's not like a part of what we do. But in the professional corporate world, it's not an uncommon practice to say, well, we're going to go take this client to a strip club to kind of close the deal. What the men's advocacy group is saying, there's a new way to do business or a better way to do business, a higher moral ground that we can change the culture.
And they're also saying 9 times out of 10, most men have viewed some form of pornography or been to a strip club. And when a person is not aware of the impact of that on your mental health and your perceptions and viewpoints, they are doing this and not thinking anything about it. So our men's group says, you know what, I've done that too. And you need not feel like you're not worthy of joining in our fight, because now that you know and understand this issue and understand that these women that you're viewing are not there willingly, they have often led a life of being forced to do this, have been raped, have been abused, often since childhood, that is not an activity that you want to find pleasure in doing. So now that you know better, you can do better.
And I love your multifaceted approach to this. So men's advocacy group, I mean, that's just one element of what you do as a whole organization. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the other programs, some of the practical things that you have in place? You said it started when a woman came to you and said, help me. Over the course of 20 years, you've developed many different facets of what help looks like. Can you tell us a little bit about those programs?
Absolutely. So our biggest program, of course, is our women's program, which has 3 components. A woman needs basically 3 things to start a new life. The first would be counseling. So we have group and individual counseling available for women. So we sit down and we make a counseling plan with them. The other piece of that is stability, which comes with case management, making sure that they have a place to live, that they have access to food and clothes, and that they are safe. So creating a safety plan is one of the first steps that we do with them. And then the other piece of it is economic empowerment. You know, ultimately, how am I going to provide for myself and my family? I know one way of doing that, but what else can I do? So the economic empowerment piece says, let's start helping you talk about your past so that you can talk to an employer. Let's start building some sort of work experience on your resume. Let's create a resume. Let's think about even some of the skills that you might have and how we could phrase that. Let's start to work with some of the people that we know understand that criminal records and criminal backgrounds have been a result of things that you've been forced to do, and are willing to work with women who have those backgrounds. And let's start talking about responsibility, how you show up for work and how you are a responsible adult. Let's talk about life skills. Let's talk about, now that you have children and maybe you have not had a positive parenting relationship yourself, so those parenting skills are not where they need to be. Let's talk about how you parent a child, how you build healthy relationships, how you eat healthy, how you manage stress. So many women, after suffering so much trauma, they have symptoms that are along the lines of PTSD in veterans. So our trauma and counseling services are in depth to help them deal with being triggered in so many different situations. And when they are triggered, understand how to manage that stress and that anger. Then on the youth side, since women have children, we will work with their children to understand where there are outages or gaps that we can help to fill. We'll work with them with their schoolwork, and we'll work with school counselors and teachers to pick up and provide what they need. Then also, since the average age that a girl is trafficked is as young as 13, we have recently opened a youth drop-in center for girls who are at high risk, meaning they're in or around situations where trafficking might be occurring, or they're beginning to age out of the foster care system, which is the biggest opportunity for traffickers to pick up girls. Or, they've been truant from school and they don't have caring parents at home. Thus, they are susceptible to being manipulated by someone who can kind of swoop in and be that pseudo parent for them, but ultimately is lining them up for a career in being trafficked. So that drop-in center is open for girls from 12 to 24 years old. And there they are able to come during the day and in the evening and get counseling if they need it. So many of them were abused as children, and that has been unresolved. Thus, they've been kicked out of school after school. We start to address that at the root. They can also hear about, well, okay, you're in high school now. Now what next? As you're aging out of foster care, let's think about options. Do you need food? We have hot meals there as often as we can. We have a pantry with food if they need to take it with them. We have a pantry of supplies. We have things for children. So we try to have a service for youth who ultimately would have no other choices and are likely to fall prey to something that means them no good as well.
Kim, Josh and I are both parents. As our children grow older, how do we keep our own kids safe, and what are the sorts of things that we need to be aware of in our own neighborhoods?
Yeah, that's a good question. I am a parent as well. I happen to have two 15-year-olds, a boy and a girl. And one of the biggest things that I've found is that communication with them is key. And you hear it so many times, but I can't underscore just how important it really is. I've heard many times from some of our survivors that they were trying to express themselves, whether it was to talk about an abuse situation or talk about some of the conflicting feelings that they had, and they just didn't have adults in their life or parents in their life that were present, that would really listen to them, really try to understand and connect with them. And in a bar, they found someone who did, male or female, who listened and listened long enough to gain their trust and then manipulate them. So being in tune with their feelings, helping them to know that no matter what it is, they can come and talk to you about it, I think is key. Also, being in tune with what's going on the internet. And I tell my kids all the time, those harmless, quote unquote, conversations that you're having on the internet with people that you don't know can often be dangerous, because on the other side of that screen, there could be a male or a female posing as someone your age, whether it's on a gaming site, a chat site, whatever, and they're building a friendship with you. And unbeknownst to you, they are cluing in on things that they know make you vulnerable. So predators and traffickers scour the internet looking for things like, my parents don't understand me, I'm mad with my family, I think about running away, I hate school. Those are all key words that help them understand where they can start to manipulate, where they can start to say, you know what, my parents get on my nerves too. Let's just meet at the mall and hang out today. I hate school. I started working as a result, and I found that I didn't need school after all. Let's meet and let's talk about it, because my friend has tons of jobs doing what I do, and I have been able to live a great life. So those are the types of things that often come to our children, in just a general way. And again, they are not understanding who is actually on the other side of that conversation, feeding them that, because they know that that's a great way to manipulate them. And I often say, make sure that kids, even at the mall, that they are with someone else. So, kids not travel alone at malls and various places because traffickers are hanging out there looking for the kid who looks withdrawn, like they are not confident. So kids who don't walk confidently and have their head up and look like they, have a mission. Those are signals also to traffickers. I tell my children, walk with your head up, walk strong, be strong, even if you're faking it, because traffickers prey on weak individuals, and you never want to be seen as a weak individual.
Wow. So on the one hand, you have a number of programs that are addressing those who are involved in sex trafficking. On the other hand, you have education and awareness. And one of the things that you offer along those lines is an awareness excursion sponsored by your men's advocacy group. I had the privilege recently to go on this excursion, which is a bus ride that goes all around, like we said, our own neighborhood. And it was completely eye-opening to pull up to different areas in DFW and hear stories about sex trafficking busts that happened or ones that are currently in process. What are some of the reactions you get from people who have taken that excursion?
Well, one of the biggest reactions we had a couple of months ago was pulling up to what on the outside appeared to be a massage parlor, a spa, and seeing a bust actually in process. So there were police everywhere and FBI, and there were tons of girls just lined on the sidewalk sitting who had been inside what was a brothel. So for individuals on the bus that day, it really brought it home, right? So it's one thing to pull up and say, at this location, police arrested 15 girls who were being housed there for years, who had been taken from Arlington and brought here and sold for sex. It's one thing to say that, and it's another thing to actually see it come in action. Generally, people, as you said, are just amazed that this is in the neighborhoods in which they live or the neighborhoods in which they work. That across the street from my business, there could be what looks like a storefront, which is actually a brothel. That men who enter that storefront show business identification to get in, because that's one way to make sure that you're legitimate, right? So through opening eyes on that bus tour, people inevitably tell their friends, tell other people, and you never view situations the same again, I think is one of the biggest outcomes. You always say, you know what, I passed by this hotel many, many times, and it doesn't have to be a not so nice hotel. It can be a very nice hotel as well. But if you're passing by it, you're attuned to the fact that there could be things happening inside those rooms that are terrifying. Also, as I walk into hotel lobbies now, and especially going into bar areas, you see individuals, especially young girls, who may be at bars, and many times it is also very harmless, but so often it's not, because girls are being told to stake out at bars and wait for their next assignment.
Wow.
And they get a text message, room 302. And they go and they come back. So that's another warning sign, things to look for. But again, back to the bus tour, it is just opening eyes that this is in our backyards. This is not something, as we were saying earlier, happens only overseas. It is happening truly right here in nice neighborhoods, in poor neighborhoods. It's happening everywhere.
You mentioned keeping our eyes open. Obviously, your organization does a ton of work around, as Josh mentioned, education, advocacy, awareness. I do feel like for a lot of us, it probably seems like such a large-scale issue that it may seem overwhelming. What are some other small, simple, practical things that all of us can do to join in the fight against sex trafficking?
I love that. First, I'll give you a couple of things to be on the lookout for, and then we'll talk about things that people can do. I like to stress that anyone, regardless of gender, race, age, socioeconomic status, anyone can be a victim of sex trafficking. So we encourage individuals to be aware and to act. In that awareness, you want to look for signs like physical abuse or malnutrition. You want to look for unexplained appearances of expensive gifts, especially with youth, who all of a sudden show up constantly with things that ordinarily they couldn't afford, individuals who are withdrawn from family or friends, and then persistent absence from school or job, especially with youth. Generally, anytime a youth is absent constantly from school, there's not a caring adult in their life, and it's our job to find out why that situation is so. So are they absent because no one is encouraging them to go to school, or are they absent because they're just so tired from having stayed up all night long or all weekend that they just can't make it to school? And then if you see those signs, you want to be careful that you alert the right individuals, that you never take anything in your own hands, that you get law enforcement involved to check it out. There's also a National Human Trafficking Hotline, 888-373-7888, which is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then as an organization, New Friends, New Life, we ask individuals who want to get involved, who want to do something, to help us raise awareness, to help spread the word about our bus tours, and help us pack those buses, which go out nearly every month. The obvious way to help is through financial support so that we can continue to provide our holistic transformational work at New Friends, New Life. Individuals can help to advocate to our legislators, our city leaders, and law enforcement by letting them know that this is a problem that we all care about and will not tolerate. Also, we are educating law enforcement about the trajectory of a woman's life and how this situation generally happens, and that arresting them is only going to perpetuate the problem because a trafficker will have 3 more girls on the street by tomorrow. The trafficker is the one that we need to go after because that is truly one of the key ways to stop the problem. And then at New Friends, New Life, we always need volunteers. We need professionals who can lend their resources from a training standpoint, a vocational standpoint with our women. We often have coaches come in and talk about professional dress, talk about resume writing. And then we need people who just want to lend their time to help us with feeding individuals. Some people want to feed. Some people just want to make sure that you have the food. They want to drop it off. There are a number of different ways that people can get involved, but that's hopefully an exhaustive list that will help people find whatever they feel their niche is.
Okay, so we've heard all these excellent programs and awareness things. I could imagine in the back of our heads a listener saying, okay, well, does it actually work? You've had this organization for 20 years. Would you mind sharing a success story or two?
Yeah, I'll share 2. And I think that when our listeners hear this, they'll be amazed, as I was, at the little things that we can do that go such a long way. So the first story is about Sharon, and she actually entered New Friends, New Life fairly recently, September of 2018, and she had experienced decades of trauma as a victim of sex trafficking and exploitation. She had no conventional work history. She had been living in shelters. She had no valid identification and was therefore unable to secure any type of employment. She also had a serious dissociative mental state because of the trauma that she had experienced throughout her life. So without a comprehensive approach, she faced major roadblocks to securing and maintaining any type of long-term independence. Well, at New Friends, New Life, we were able to help her access financial literacy coaching and workforce readiness training in tandem with the trauma-informed counseling that we offer to build mental coping skills and case management to help her obtain her ID and other documents that she needed to be able to apply for jobs and community resources. Sharon secured her first entry-level job in June of this year, of 2019.
That's so cool.
And she was quickly promoted into a higher-level role, securing both advancement in her salary and responsibility. And as of July, she now has left the Salvation Army, where she was seeking shelter, and has enough savings and financial credit that she's able to live in her own apartment.
That's awesome.
And she is so proud of herself. And of course, we are so proud of her. To have only started a job a few months ago and already received a promotion meant that she has so much talent that was there.
That is too cool.
The other story is about Renee. Renee's childhood was filled with sexual abuse and drugs. When she was 14, she was kicked out of her home by her father. And with no one to turn to, she felt the only way to survive was to have sex with men who would provide food and shelter for her. We hear that so often. And despite feeling that no one believed in her future, though, she got her GED at 17 and she enrolled in community college. However, her dreams were extinguished when she was coerced by a man under the guise of attending a concert. The man she thought she knew ended up forcing her into sex trafficking for over 10 years. She felt she couldn't escape the devastating impact of those experiences, but then she found New Friends, New Life. And she came to us with a newborn, and she needed job support. She needed counseling, so we quickly enrolled her in our program. Not only has Renee benefited, but her children are also receiving counseling to aid in their development and provide quality childcare. She created a new beginning for herself. She earned a certificate in the medical field. Through her connection with our employment partnership program, she is doing her dream job of working in a hospital with a new goal of pursuing nursing. So she's begun to build a future for herself and her family, and it's a future that, of course, she didn't dream was possible.
One of my favorite things as we discuss all of this programming and stories of clients of yours that have come through and had incredible success is the ability to break cycles in their lives that are devastating and give them new hope and new pathways. And I think any organization that is able to work on breaking those cycles is doing great work. So if there are listeners of ours who would want to find out more information, want to get involved, would you give us your website or places to get in touch with New Friends, New Life?
Absolutely. Our website is newfriendsnewlife.org. There you can find information on our women's program, on our teens program. You can find ways to volunteer. You can sign up for volunteer opportunities. There's more information about our men's group on that website as well. And then one thing that we focus on every year is an annual luncheon, which is a huge fundraiser for us. And this year, on October 11th at the Dallas Omni, we are featuring Jada Pinkett Smith as our luncheon speaker.
That's awesome.
I've heard of her.
Yeah, me too. Me
kind of a big
too.
deal.
Yeah, just a little bit. And a lot of people don't know this, but Jada has been deeply immersed in advocacy against trafficking. She has done a number of different sex trafficking specials on CNN and other places, and she is always fighting for justice for women and fighting against women being sold and manipulated and exploited. So we're happy to have her and excited for the message that she will give us.
And so that's October 11th.
That's
And
October 11th.
I would imagine we could get tickets on the website.
You can definitely get tickets on the website. It's a luncheon, so it starts at 11:30, and you're out by 1 o'clock.
Great. Now, we do have one thing on our podcast that we ask every guest. At this point in your life, what's one thing that you wish someone would have told you?
I actually wish someone would have told me, follow your passion sooner. I was always told work hard and be able to provide for yourself, your family, be independent. But I wasn't told to necessarily put passion at the front of that list. And now that I've found New Friends, New Life and have this wonderful opportunity to work to better the lives of women and girls who are living in the margins of society and often don't have anyone who will fight for them, I have realized that this is what God wanted me to do, and that all of the experiences that I had prior to were leading me to this. Were building the right skills in me to be able to do this. So I went from marketing and selling things that were not fundamental for development and sustainability and definitely weren't going to change your life to things that definitely have an impact on you forever and will help you change your life and lead ultimately a life that you were destined to have.
Well, Kim, your passion is evident for New Friends, New Life, and you're doing incredible work there and wise words for all of us. We appreciate you so much for taking the time to share your story and the story of New Friends, New Life today for our listeners so that we might hopefully help in awareness and advocacy for that. We appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you so much. I have enjoyed this conversation.
As difficult a conversation as this is, and as easy as it may be to just try to sweep it under the rug, it's so important for us to have this conversation. And it's wonderful to hear from Kim today about all of the ways that New Friends, New Life is not only addressing the needs of those coming out of sex trafficking, but also creating a sense of awareness around this issue.
I know for me, listening to her, one of the things that strikes me is that this is not just an issue that begins when someone is an adult, but it's something that begins culturally as a part of our vocabulary, even at the junior high school level. And so I love what they're doing with the men's advocacy group in particular in changing the conversation in the way that we even talk about each other in this effort to create a world of mutual respect.
For more information about our church's involvement with New Friends, New Life, or if you just want to find out a little bit more about the organization itself, you can visit fumcr.com/morethansunday.
Today we want to leave you with a verse that reminds us of the value of human life. This is Psalm 139. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of More Than Sunday. If you like the podcast, please feel free to share it, go online and leave a comment, or give us a rating so that others might hear about us. We've got a new episode coming out every Wednesday, so make sure you also subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss our next episode. If you want to find out more about First United Methodist Church Richardson, you can find us online at fumcr.com, as well as on Facebook and Instagram. Special thanks to Kim Robinson for joining us this week, and make sure you tune in next Wednesday when we have a conversation with the CEO of City Square, Larry James. Have a great week.